Okay, welcome everyone to a new episode of Technique Tuesday, where every week we're going to be breaking down the lost art and science of training technique for one specific movement. This week we're going to be looking at the bicep curl, and in particular, how to get the most biceps bang for your buck out of the barbell curl. And while the curl appears to be a pretty straightforward exercise on the surface, as we'll see, there's actually quite a bit more complexity and muscular involvement than many people realize. Okay, so with this movement, we're going to be performing mainly elbow flexion. So basically just bending your elbow, which contrary to popular belief is in fact handled mainly by the brachialis muscle, that very powerful muscle that sits underneath the biceps. And even though you can't see it superficially when you flex your arms, building this muscle will push the biceps brachii up and out more, which will increase their appearance of size as well. Now, of course, since the biceps brachii do cross the elbow joint, they will be doing a lot of work here as well. And these two prime movers will get assistance from the brachioradialis muscle on the back of the forearm. Now, we're also performing wrist supination here, so twisting your palm up, which will be handled mainly by the biceps and also the supinator muscle of the forearm. And supination is actually really important for targeting the biceps because that more powerful underlying brachialis muscle can't contribute to supination, meaning the biceps will have to handle the brunt of the load here. Also, when viewing the curl from the side, you can see that some degree of shoulder flexion is happening, which is fine. The biceps, in particular the long head that forms the biceps peak, assists the front delt with shoulder flexion, since the biceps also crosses the shoulder joint and can help bring the arm up like in a front raise. Finally, throughout the curl, there will be an isometric wrist flexion contraction, where the muscles of the anterior forearm prevent the wrist from bending backwards, maintaining that neutral wrist position throughout the curl. Now, I put the barbell curl, easy bar curl, and dumbbell curl on pretty much even footing here. The main advantage of the barbell curl is that you can more easily apply progressive overload with minimal load increases week to week, adding just 2.5 pounds to each side as needed. Whereas with dumbbells, you may have to make bigger jumps of 5 pounds per side, which could compromise form or delay load progression. And while the barbell does allow for a slightly more supinated wrist position than the easy bar, I don't think this difference is practically relevant, especially if you cue for supination, as we'll discuss in a minute. And if the easy bar feels better for you or more comfortable on your wrists, then I think you should just go with that. And we'll return to the dumbbell curl in a little bit. Okay, so generally speaking, you want to load the bar with light to moderate load in a relatively higher rep zone, around 8 to 20 reps, because loading the biceps too heavily will just result in form breakdown as other muscles come in and help heave the weight up. And throughout the curl, rather than having the amount of weight at the forefront, I think you really want to focus on improving your mind-muscle connection with the biceps and squeezing the biceps as you curl. One 8-week training study from Schoenfeld and colleagues found that focusing on squeezing the biceps resulted in significantly more hypertrophy than just focusing on moving the weight. So you want to grab the bar with a comfortable grip width, which for most people will be at just about shoulder width. Now, because the long head of the biceps is a stronger shoulder abductor than the short head, taking a wider grip may target the biceps peak slightly more. However, at this point, that's just kind of my own speculation, and it might not actually be worth the reduced range of motion you get from going wider. And I'm personally not a fan of the very close grip, as it also reduces range of motion, and according to one source, reduces biceps EMG amplitude by 13% relative to a shoulder width grip. As a quick aside, when it comes to targeting the long head or that outer peak, Dr. Brad Schoenfeld has recommended performing exercises where the upper arm is held behind the body, where the long head will be placed under greater stretch. So if your goal is to maximize the peak, in addition to the basic barbell curl, you may want to also include an incline dumbbell curl or a Bayesian cable curl, where the arm is held back behind the torso. Okay, back to the barbell curl. So with a comfortable, roughly shoulder width, supinated or underhand grip, stand upright with the barbell, keeping a strong shoulder width stance with a braced core and slightly bent knees. Now, unlike with the bench press, here you want to purposefully take a more loose grip with your hands and fingers, which will increase biceps involvement by minimizing activation of the elbow flexors of the forearm. You want to make sure that before initiating the curl, your elbows are tucked in comfortably close to your sides, and just before initiating the curl, you want to slightly flex the shoulder, or in other words, bring your arms forward by about 10 degrees. And at the same time, try tilting your scapulae posteriorly. Since the short head of the biceps attaches on the front end of the scapula, tilting them posteriorly will pull tension into the biceps. As you begin the curl, think about putting the majority of the pressure on your pinky and ring fingers rather than your pointer and middle fingers, which will force the wrist into a more supinated position, further shifting tension onto the biceps. You want to think about curling the bar out in front of you in an arc rather than straight up. And let's just look at the difference here. So on the left, we're just pulling the bar straight up, and on the right, we're swinging the bar out in an arc. Just notice the difference in distance between the axis of rotation at the elbow and the center of mass at the barbell between these two variations. Even though the weight is exactly the same, you're going to generate much more torque, and as a result, much more tension on the biceps by curling the bar out rather than just pulling it straight up. Now, generally, as you reach the top end of the curl, you want to maintain a neutral wrist position, not allowing the wrists to curl in at any point throughout the range of motion. In fact, as an advanced technique, you can slightly extend the wrists at the top, which will help take the forearm muscles out of the movement even more. Just be careful when doing this, and if you feel any wrist pain, then don't do it. Now, as you curl, when viewed from the side, there shouldn't be much movement at the knees, hips, or lower back. And other than the arms, everything should be pretty much motionless and locked into position. And even though I don't like to pause at the top of the curl myself, since there will be minimal tension there, you do want to think about squeezing your biceps to move the weight, including at the top of each rep. Now on the eccentric, again, you want to lower the bar out in an arc while maintaining a loose grip and forcefully contracting your biceps. The eccentric is just as or more important than the concentric when it comes to muscle growth, so don't treat the negative as just a time to relax and just let the weight fall. I personally like to think of the negative as a sort of failed positive where you're actively resisting the weight on the way down. Now, I personally prefer to reset every rep at the bottom because it allows me to regain position and get a deep breath in, which helps maintain upper body tightness and stability on the next rep, which allows me to better control the weight and move more load overall. So I would say the most common error that I see here is the same as with the row, just going too heavy. Now, I'm not against cheat curls on principle. I think they can have a place in a program, especially if you're really controlling the eccentric. However, they can set you up on a bit of a slippery slope where you may not be actually applying progressive overload. You may be, in fact, applying progressive cheating, where you just progressively get more and more assistance from the other muscles down the chain, while tension on the biceps actually goes down or at best stays the same. So I think that a bit of shoulder flexion up to 10 to 15 degrees is actually a good thing to get the curl started, but as the hips, knees, and ankles start to get involved, it starts to become a totally different exercise. Now, an arm blaster can actually be really helpful here, as it helps to keep the shoulders back and enforces a better lifting posture. However, you don't want to use it as a crutch, and as with most exercises, you should learn proper form without the aid of supplemental lifting gear first. Another common error that I see all the time is lack of active supination. Many people will correctly curl with an underhand grip, but then forget to actively supinate by driving their pinky and ring fingers into the bar, which can result in a curl where the forearms perform much more of the work than the biceps. Now, I want to quickly mention the standing dumbbell curl here as an excellent adjunct exercise, since it has the advantage of hitting each arm individually, which can correct for asymmetries. And unlike the barbell, you can start with a neutral wrist position and then supinate throughout the concentric. Now, to maximize on this, you want to curl with your pinky finger in the center of the dumbbell, which is going to force your biceps to fire harder when performing supination. Of course, combining exercises is usually the best way to work around slight pitfalls in each individual movement, so don't be scared to periodically vary your routine while using the basic barbell or easy bar curl as the bread and butter movement of your arm building program. Okay, so that's it for this one, guys. I've decided that I'm gonna leave the entire Technique Tuesday series totally unsponsored, so that way I can just focus on delivering the information to you guys in its purest form. Now, these videos will usually take Rashaun and I upwards of 30 hours to edit, research, write, film, etc. So if you've been benefiting from the series so far, purchasing a program on my website is the best way that you can support the work that I'm doing over here on this channel, while at the same time getting a complete and very applicable version of some of the stuff I talk about in my videos. So for the release of this video, I've decided I'm gonna knock my Arm Hypertrophy program down by 30% for the next week, which is gonna put it at just $13.99. And there's more info on that Arm Hypertrophy program on my website if you'd like to check it out. So thanks again, guys, so much for tuning in, and thank you so much for the amazing feedback on the series so far. I really do appreciate that, and it's been really motivating for me in terms of wanting to just crank these episodes out every week and make each one better and better. So please don't forget to leave me a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe so you don't miss future Technique Tuesday episodes, and I'll see you guys all here next Tuesday.